Welcome everybody to the Carpenter Ant webinar. And yesterday I explained why we are doing it as titled the Carpenter Ant. And it's because I write this weird and wacky holiday marketing guide every year. And this year, every month, what I do is I put together a free bonus idea on the holidaymarketingguide.com. And when I was coming up with that idea for the month, I ran across Carpenter Ant Awareness Week. And I said, well, they kind of eat away at our success and they eat away at our dreams and all the confidence and all that kind of stuff, so we can use those to have a webinar. And John graciously accepted my invitation to be one of our guest speakers. And so I would like to start off by introducing him. He is the book marketing expert. He's also the author of the 1001 Ways to Market Your Book. And he's sold over 1 billion books, not $1 billion worth of books, 1 billion books. So multiply that out. And he's the founder of
$14.
$14. And he's also the founder of the Billion Book Initiative to help the next generation of book authors to sell another 1 billion books. Over the past 30 years, he's helped thousands of authors, both major celebrities and those just starting out, to sell more books, lots of more books. John, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ginger. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to market books. And I'm not going to talk just about fiction. I'm going to also talk about nonfiction, memoirs, children's books, the whole gamut, because needs. And each genre, whether it's nonfiction, fiction, children's books, memoirs, have different requirements. There are certain things that in marketing you would do differently than you would with a different genre. So for example, let's say that you were doing children's books. Children's books, you have different audiences, and you have to think about those different audiences. You have the audience of children themselves, you have their parents, you have their grandparents, you have teachers, and they all have different, what would you say, different needs, different reasons for why they would buy a children's book. And you have to be aware of that in order to market to that audience. What are their needs? Why would they be interested in your book? And that's one of the first things that you really have to be aware of, is who is the audience for your book, no matter what it is, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. Who would want to read your book? And then address those particular reasons of why they would want to to read your book. And more importantly, why would they want to buy your book? Because a lot of them are not going to necessarily buy your book if they don't have a good reason for buying it. They're more likely, if they're sort of lukewarm about it, to go to the bookstore, check it out, or go to the library and see if the book is available there and read it there, and then decide if they want to buy the book. And there have been many cases where I've read a book in a library and then ultimately bought it because I wanted it at home. I wanted to be able to come back and refer to it multiple times. For example, you see my book, 1001 Ways to Market Your Books. That's a reference book. I mean, it's a book that you could check out of the library, but ultimately they're going to tell you you can't check it out 6 times in a row because there's other people that want to read it. And I've had librarians tell authors, hey, you've checked it out enough times, let some other people read it. So at that point, they've come to me and bought the book, or they've gone to Amazon and bought the book. And that's part of what happens when you have a book that people will want to reference again and again, or want to share with their friends. Often people buy books because they want to share it with their friends. They want to either give it to a friend, or they want to have it on their coffee table so they can say, hey, I'm interested in yoga, or hey, I'm interested in paleo recipes, or whatever it might be. And so they will put that in, the book on their coffee table or somewhere in their house. So when friends come over, they can start a conversation about that topic. And books are a great conversation starter. So there are different reasons why people buy books, but the primary reason people buy books is to read them. And so you want to give them a good idea of why your book is the one they want to read. Let's say you have a memoir. Now, memoirs, quite honestly, have to be marketed almost the same as a novel because they tell a story. And if your memoir isn't well written, it's going to be tough to convince people to buy that book if it's choppy, if it's stilted or stiff or whatever. Uh, so not only do you have to have an interesting life, but you have to tell it well, because a memoir should read, in many cases, like a good novel. And in my mind, the best memoir isn't necessarily the one that starts when you were born, goes through first grade and third grade and sixth grade and so on until, today, something like that. I think the best memoir is one that sort of jumps back and forth based on the topics, what you're talking about. Because how you view, let's say, bullying, being bullied, is different when you're in the third grade and when you're 22 or when you're 56. Chances are when you're 56, you're probably not going to tolerate bullying at all. When you're 22, you might. When you're in the third grade, you probably don't have a choice. You may not be big enough to fight off or stand up against that bully, and maybe your friends don't help you. So when you write your memoir, you might actually include all three ages as part of your talking about dealing with bullies. Rather than talk about it when you're in the third grade, talk about it when you're 22, and talk about it when you're 56, chronologically. So memoir, because again, if a memoir is written like a novel is going to jump back and forth in time. I was just listening to a novel that my wife was listening to while we were eating lunch, and it jumped back and forth. And it was interesting because at one point I said, whoa, where did that come from? Because suddenly we jumped to a different time in the story. And because I hadn't listened to the entire CD, I didn't realize it had jumped at all because I didn't know, I was going, wait, he's 40 years older and, whatever. So it didn't work for me in that sense until I realized that they had jumped forward in time. And then I realized, oh, okay, we're dealing with another part of his life. And then the story of this guy, which is really interesting. It was a funny novel. It was called something like the story of the 100-year-old man. And my wife likes to listen to stories while she's eating or cooking and or exercising. And so I often hear parts of the novel as I walk in and out of the house because my office is separate from the house, about 50 feet that way is where the house is. I'm in the office now. So no matter what you're marketing, you have to think of who would want to read it. Children's book, is it going to be the children? Is it going to be the parents reading to the children? Is it going to be the grandparents who want to buy it because they think the children will like it? Will it be the school teacher because they think it'll be a great story to share with their classroom or something like that? Will it be the media person at the school that buys it for the library? It could be any of those markets that you would have to think about, or it could be something else beyond that. For example, if your novel, let's see, I think, Paul has a third grade reading level historical fiction book. And you have to think about, okay, would history teachers be interested in it? Would the grade school be interested in it to teach history through the life of somebody? And if so, that's how you would approach libraries and teachers, is that the story is not just a good story, but it helps kids live the history of that particular time. There's a book series called I think it's called the American Girl series. Um, Multi-million copies sold of that series, and it's all about the lives of young girls, usually around the age of 8 to 12, living at different historical periods, primarily in the United States. So you had Revolutionary War girl, you had the Civil War girl, you had the 1880s girl, the 1912 girl, so on, probably 1930s girl growing up in the Depression, things like that. And they had dolls to go with it. So the company, started off as a self-publisher, which is a really neat story. The lady that did it was a school teacher that decided to publish historical stories. And so she self-published it. And then she said, let's make dolls. I think she probably thought about that right from the beginning, and book and doll combined. And ultimately, she sold her company to Reader's Digest for $300 million. A nice payday if you can get it. And I think she went on to, now I think the American Girls collection is written by other authors and not just by the original author. But it's been a success. I'm sure some of you have probably stopped by one of the American Girls retail stores. I don't know how many there are, but I know there's one in Chicago, and I would guess there's around 10 or 20 around the country, maybe more. Again, selling the dolls, the clothes that go with the dolls, and multiple outfits to wear, as well as the books. And the books come in different formats, not just stories, but I think there's coloring books and probably some nonfiction books that go with the stories and so on. Uh, I'm not the market for that collection, so, and I don't have a little girl, daughter, so I've never really explored it that closely, other than to know that it was a very successful program and still is. Now, that lady chose to market primarily to the kids, the girls, in the beginning, but ultimately, of course, she was marketing to the parents and the grandparents who would take the kids to the stores or buy online the dolls, the outfits, and so on and so forth that went with it. And it became a big marketing machine in a sense. So you have to think about, where would people want to find out about your book? Like, I think one of the best things you can do in terms of marketing children's books is give a copy to doctors, pediatricians, and dentists that deal with families and young kids. Because if a kid picks up a book in the doctor's office and likes it, I can guarantee you they're going to talk their parents into buying a copy for them to have at home. Because one of the really neat things about children's books is that when a child likes a children's book, they want it read to them multiple times, or they want to read it multiple times, over and over again, because they love the story, they love the character, and so on. So you have to think about, where can you expose the kids to the story so that they want to buy it. And that's one reason why you really do want to have your children's book in libraries, in school libraries, in teachers potentially buying it, bookstores featuring it in their children's section, and going on to read at schools and children's, in bookstores and so on. Because again, that will get the kids interested in the story. And if they like the story, if they liked how you read it when you were at the bookstore or the library or the school, they're going to want, and they're going to bug their parents until they buy the book, or their grandparents if the parents won't buy the book. And that's one reason why you really want to get your book out where kids can find it and discover it. And the neat thing is that if kids like something, what's the first thing they do? They tell everybody they know about the book. Harry Potter was a success because the kids shared it with everybody else. Hey, do you know about this 10-year-old wizard kid? I've been reading the story and it's incredible. It's a hard read because it's a little bit old for me, but I learned the big words and I love the story and I love pretending that I'm Harry Potter and that I'm doing the magic and things like that. And of course, you all know that J.K. Rowling became one of the first billionaires to build their business solely from writing books. I think James Patterson and maybe one or two other authors have become billionaires because of the books they wrote. And certainly Oprah, who writes books, is a billionaire and things like that. But she didn't get it from just writing books. Her main income comes from TV. But J.K. Rowling, all her income came from the books, obviously also from movies. And you obviously, if you have a story like Paul's again, that third grade reading level historical fiction, you hope that a TV show gets made out of it or a movie or something like that. I noticed just recently that Anne of Green Gables, a story that was written, gosh, I'm not sure how many years ago, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, has been made into another TV series. It's been made into 3 or 4 TV series over its lifetime, and there's a new one on Netflix of Anne's story of coming in, to Nova Scotia and coming in new into a town and taking over the town and winning over the townspeople and all that. Kids love those stories. The parents love any kind of story that teaches people, certain moral principles or lessons or things like that, or are funny. I mean, children's story, Captain Underpants. The kids love that story because probably every kid has had a dream at some point or another of being at school in their underwear or something like that. And so Captain Underpants captured that idea, and it's been a bestseller. And it's just, I think the first movie of it came out just recently, the Captain Underpants movie, and it sold a lot of tickets. So that's something about children's books. I'm going to talk a little bit about, and I've talked a little bit about memoirs. I want to talk a little bit about humor, because Kay had a question on that. She has some humor books. Humor is a very interesting thing. There are a lot of people that are very different in their humor, and you probably have noticed that. Sorry, I need to disconnect this phone so that people aren't calling me. There we go. Ha! That goes there. I apologize for the interruption. So humor is, no, how is that happening? I unplugged it. There, I did it again. Okay, so somebody really wants to get a hold of me. I hope it's not my wife. She knows I'm supposed to be here in this webinar. So anyway, humor is very, very particular. It's tough to sell humor if your humor is very specific. Satire works sometimes the humor works really well. If it's laugh out loud funny, it's gonna probably sell to anybody. But if it's who is that one actress that cut off Donald Trump's head and thought it was funny? When she found out a lot of people didn't think it was funny, she said, I was just being funny. And she found out that a lot of people didn't appreciate her humor. So humor can be very, very specific to certain people. There were certainly people that did find it funny. There are people that find other people's humor very funny, and some that don't. So it can be a tough sell sometimes. But the neat thing is that there will be people like funny. People like to be entertained. So if you find your audience, if you find the right people that like your kind of humor, then you should be able to do pretty well. If I was doing a humor book, there would be two key things that I would be doing right away. One is I would be doing live events wherever I could, where I read a story from my book, the best, funniest story that I have in the book. Because if people like that story, they're going to want to buy your book because they hope that you have at least one other funny story like it. When Chicken Soup for the Soul first came out, I heard Mark tell one story from it, and I had tears just streaming down my eyes. I mean, I was bawling from the story that he told. And I said, if there's one other story like that that moves me, I want the book. And I actually got a gift of the book from Jack and Mark, but I brought it home. My wife read it, and she made me buy 10 more copies. So, it moved her. She wanted to share it with her friends and family. And that free book ended up costing me a lot more than it should have. I guess you could say, except, of course, it was a good book. The series was a good series because they told stories that moved people. And they started by promoting the book through speaking, through their co-authors who were speakers, by doing shows on radio where they talked about and told a story from the book. And people were moved by the story they told, and they wanted the book, and they went out to the stores and bought it. And in the beginning, they didn't get any TV invites. It took them probably a year or more before they actually got on TV. But they were speaking everywhere. They were going to bookstores. They were going to libraries. They were going to schools. They were going to garden clubs. They were going to online venues to speak about it. Actually, when the book came out, there wasn't really an online access for them to do that, but they would speak wherever they could. Nowadays, you have things like these webinars where I'm speaking to you, you're listening in, and you're participating in listening to the stories I tell you and the advice I give you. There are thousands and thousands of webinars going on every day. There are thousands and thousands of podcast episodes being broadcast every day. There are tons of seminars, there are tons of Facebook Live videos being done, and so on and so forth. So there are lots and lots of opportunities for you to tell your story and to share it with other people. And that's part of what you want to do in sharing your humor if you have a good story to tell. And that's important because when you're dealing with fiction and memoirs, you have to get in front of people, either online or through live events, bookstores and things like that, where people will hear you. Poetry is the same way. You don't sell poetry if you don't do poetry readings. People don't care. I had a friend, his name was Brad Bathgate, I think it was, but he was also known as Blue. As a poet, he was known as Blue, and he would go onto the subway of New York City with a case of books, carried probably 30 books in a case, and he wouldn't get off the subway until he had sold out the case. And what he'd do is he'd get up in front on the subway and read from his poetry book, and he did the same thing for a novel he wrote, and sold the book because people love buying from people, the authors that they've met, that they know. And so he ended up selling out a case of books, and he wouldn't leave until he had sold out. So every day he sold a case of books, another case of books. And most of us as authors don't sell a case of books a day, but he had an incredible venue for doing so, the subways of New York, where people are bored. They want to be entertained, and he was entertaining in his reading. And so he would read poetry, and he'd be dramatic about it, and he'd go wow, 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 whatever it was, or he'd tell some story from his novel, some part of it, get people interested. He'd entertain them enough so that they were interested, so that they were ready to buy the book when he said, How many of you would like a copy now, autographed by the author, $10? And so he made $300 a day selling his poetry book or his novel. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sold out in a couple hours, that he didn't go back, get another case, and go back on the subway. But he was an entrepreneur. He wasn't afraid to do that. And quite honestly, I don't care if you're an author who loves to just write and hide away in your little office or attic or cubicle and write books and don't want to talk to people. Quite honestly, you have to. You have to get in front of people and read or talk about your book, whatever it might be. So if you don't have fiction or poetry or memoirs, then you tell a story like I'm doing here. I'm telling you different stories so that you get an idea of the different kinds of ways, in my case, of how to market your books. But let's say you have a nonfiction book, a business book, or you have a cookbook. In a cookbook, you would share recipes or stories about how the recipes came about, or how your grandma and you used to bake cookies together and the recipes come from your grandma. Or I remember a guy that wrote an Italian cookbook, and most of the recipes came from his Italian grandmother who grew up in Umbria, Italy, and he shared all the authentic recipes that came directly from Italy. They weren't American Italian recipes. They were authentic Italian recipes. And so he told the story about his grandmother and how he loved her food and things like that. And then he could share a recipe. You can do the same thing if you have a cookbook. If you have a health book, you give them 3 to 6 points about how to be healthy. What you should be doing, eat more avocados or whatever it might be. And you tell that story, and you might even tell the story of how you changed and how it made a difference. And so you could tell your own story. For example, I'm working on a weight loss book because recently, the last year, I lost 20 pounds. And as a result of that, I changed my diabetes in a very significant way. So I can tell that story. And, of course, I would elaborate on it if I were selling that particular book. But I would tell that story of how it made a difference for me in terms of a really serious disease that I'm now basically have under control, and which wasn't under control a year ago. So you tell stories. People, when you speak to them, won't remember your abstract points. They will remember the stories that illustrate the abstract point. And when they share what you talk about with their friends, if they do, and you hope they do, because you hope they like what you talk about, they're going to tell the stories that you tell. That's why it doesn't matter whether you're doing fiction, nonfiction, or whatever. You have to learn how to tell stories. They don't have to be long, involved stories. They can be short, 3 or 4 sentences or less sometimes. But it tells a story, like the one I talked about, Chicken Soup for the Soul, that I brought it home. My wife read it, and I had to buy 10 copies. That's a short story. That was 3 sentences, very short sentences. But it illustrates a point that stories make a difference, that a good book will sell itself once you get it into people's hands. And people end up buying multiple copies. And this isn't unusual, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, even memoirs. I mean, I know one guy who wrote a fiction book, but it was sort of based on his experience. And he'd go into stores and read from the book, and he'd sell lots and lots of copies because he loved doing it. He loved telling people his stories. He's a good friend of mine, and one of the ways he sells is he goes into Costco, into his local Costco stores, brings a case of books, or has them buy them to his distributor that sells to Costco, and he doesn't leave Costco for 8 hours until he's sold all the books that they've bought. and he sells 100 copies a day in Costco. And he's self-published. So it's not like he's, somebody special or anything like that, but he's a good salesman because he talked. He tells people, this is a great book. I'm the author. You've got to buy the book because it's a great story. And he starts telling a little bit about the story, and people buy the book because he's going to autograph it for them. And then once he autographs it personally for them, they got to buy the book. And so he sells the book that way. So you think about what it is, how you want to approach people to sell your book. There are many ways to do that. And nowadays online, you can do a lot of that by choosing to do Facebook Live and read from your book on a Facebook Live event. Maybe only 5 people see it when you're doing it live, but maybe 100 or 200 people see it, are exposed to it ultimately, and maybe it gets shared by 2 or 3 people. It's suddenly you're exposed to 1,000 people seeing your Facebook Live event. I have a friend, Mike Koenig, who does things about self-publishing and internet marketing and things like that. And he often does Facebook Live while driving his car. Now I think that's kind of dangerous. I don't usually recommend that to people because that's distracted driving. But he does it safely. He arrives at his office safely, and he's told his story while he's driving. Personally, I couldn't do it because I do get distracted when I'm talking. So I'm not paying attention to the road if I'm talking to somebody in a video. So I wouldn't do that, but I've done Facebook Live events. Some of you have probably seen some of them. And they can be really nice, but you don't have to do necessarily just Facebook Live. I'm going to show you something right now on my screen. Let's see, share screen. And you should see now my screen here. And there's this wonderful new site called Lumen5, Lumen5.com. that allows you to create videos basically by typing in, I can type on here, create video, and then I put in my blog post, or I can actually use my own content if I want to. So I can take, let's say, 10 sentences from something that I wrote, put it in here, it creates a video, and now I'm going to showcase one of the videos that I made using this service. This is doing a podcast to create visibility. And let's see, I think I have to, I thought there was a way to share my audio. It's playing music at the same time. I don't know if you can hear it. But this was created from a podcast I did. It's a simple 1:45 seconds of advice on how to do podcasts. It took me 5 minutes to create this. They do, Lumen5 takes the text, adds images to it, which you can change if you want to. If you don't like the image, you can add or change to a new image. You can upload your own images if you want to. But this video, 1:45 video, took me about 5 minutes to create. And you can see it's a neat video. They add the music. All the images are copyright free, so you don't run into problems with copyright or anything like that. And you can see how simple it is to create. And I just wanted to show that to you. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. Let's see. Oh, I got it. So I stopped sharing, but I wanted to show you that video. Those are simple things to create. You go to Lumen, Lumen5.com, and you can create from any text if you want to upload text, or from any blog post by just simply entering the blog post URL into Lumen5. And you can create these videos. It's a really neat service. I've created 5 videos so far. I create about 1 a day. Now, they only take about 5 or 10 minutes to create, depending on how picky you are about how it looks and things like that. It does take a little bit longer to process. I forget what they call it, but they have to process the video, and so they email you when it's ready. And again, it can take a couple hours for them to process the video, but then they email you, and then you download the video and you upload it to Facebook, you upload it to Twitter, you upload it to your blog, you upload it to Google, you upload it to Pinterest. You share it wherever you can. You can share it on Instagram, wherever your social media are. Almost every social media now supports video uploads, and it's a great way to share. And quite honestly, people still love watching videos. There's a difference between doing a webinar like we're doing here, where you can see me talk, and then a teleseminar where you only listen to me. And I think, not only, I think you probably enjoy seeing me talk and hearing me talk at the same time. Plus, I can, like I just did, share my screen, show you something, and that allows me to illustrate things that I couldn't possibly do in a teleseminar. I couldn't show you Lumen 5. I could tell you about it. I could not show you the video that I created using Lumen 5 because it wouldn't make sense. You'd hear the music and you wouldn't see the video. So you can share it very simply by downloading it and then uploading it to wherever you, to wherever you want to. So what I do, I upload it to YouTube, and from there I put it on my blog, so that I don't have to host the video on my blog because that takes much more bandwidth. So I put it up on YouTube because I want to anyway. I want people to share it. I want people to say, wow, that's a neat video. I'm going to put it up on my blog post, and I hope people do. Because at the end of the video is my website, bookmarketingbestsellers.com, and an exhortation for people to say, if you like this, share it. So, it's a simple process. It's a really neat service, and it's so easy to use that even a dummy like me can do it. Actually, I'm not that dumb. And I have probably 40 or 50 video programs. And quite honestly, this is my favorite as of the last 5 days that I've been using it. I've been creating one video a day from a blog post. I created a video, and this is an interesting thing, because you don't have to share just a nonfiction. You can share. One of the videos I created was from a short story that my wife wrote called Believe. And I share it at myincrediblewebsite.com/believe.video, I think, .html or .video, I think it is. I share the video. I shared the story on my blog as well, but because I love my wife's stories. But now I created a video out of it. And it was really simple and easy to do. And again, it's a nice way to share stories. So, you can do it for your memoirs, your fiction. You can share a little story from one of your books. Again, you just cut and paste it into Lumen 5, and boom, create the video. What it does is it uses some sort of artificial intelligence to actually pick the images that will go with the key word in each of your sentences. And it usually does a pretty good job. Once in a while, I don't like what they use, so I will go through the video, the images they've picked, and I'll pick a different one. Or sometimes it allows you to search for video images, so you could search for a keyword that you want to use. And my wife's story, for example, is about turtles and frogs. A turtle invites the frog to go flying to the moon, and the frog said, turtles don't fly. And the turtle does fly and takes him to the moon. And it's, the frog says, from now on, I will believe when the turtle tells me something. And so the story is called Believe. Now, Lumen 5 picked a couple turtle images, but it didn't pick any frog images. So I searched within Lumen 5 for frog images, and I used one of them when I talked about frog. But otherwise, it did a great job picking images for the video, and it's really a neat service. Right now, it's free. At some point, I'm sure they're going to figure out a way to monetize it or maybe charge you for it. But right now, it's free. But even if it wasn't free, let's say they charged me $20 a month, I'd probably pay it because it's a really neat service. And I've seen a lot of other video services I would not pay $20 a month for. And I think it's much better because it really does use artificial intelligence in a smart way. I think it's much better than any modal, which is one that does charge you to create videos if you want to. They have a free service too, but it's not nearly as good as this one, lumen5.com. So, and you can go to my Facebook pages or my Facebook profile, and you'll see some of the other videos I created. I'm having fun doing it. I'm probably going to create at least 1 or 2 videos every day using it because I think it really adds another level of interest to my blog post. So and I'll add it to the original blog post. So I did the blog post on that podcasting video that I just showcased you. I put that video up on that same blog post, and now I can redirect people and re-enliven an old blog post that way. So I can share that video again on and my blog post on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus, wherever I want to. And you can do the same thing because at some point you have to figure out a way to get people to come to your website to buy your book or find out more about you and your book. And that's one thing that I think social networking can be good at, but only if you add new content to your social networks on a regular basis. And videos Facebook will tell you, they are going all in on video. Facebook live videos is something that they're doing because they want to be a video platform. They are not any longer a social media platform. They are a video platform. That's what they want to be. That's Facebook. They want to be not a social media platform anymore, but a video platform, and they're going all in for that. And they're going to be charging companies to get video space at some point. And even now on Facebook, I think more people today, or it's very close, are watching videos on Facebook as the number of people watching videos on YouTube. And Facebook is much more designed to be viral than YouTube is. YouTube, I don't know, it may disappear at some point because Facebook is really trying to make it disappear. It's trying to take over the video space online. And they're doing all the mechanisms like Facebook Live, uploading videos direct to them. They really make it unpleasant for you to upload a YouTube video to Facebook. They don't want you to do that anymore. They used to showcase YouTube, but then that drove people to YouTube. And they don't want that. They want people to stay on Facebook. So one of the things, a hint for you again, is to make sure that when you upload content to Facebook, you don't always send people back to your blog. Send them to your Facebook page where you will have sales buttons for them to buy your book right on Facebook instead of having to come to your blog or go to Amazon. Facebook wants you to sell on Facebook. Of course, they're going to take a piece of the action if they can. But there are different platforms that allow you to share. I think Shopify is one of them that allows you to create buttons on Facebook to sell your book within the Facebook platform. Think of it always in terms of Facebook wants to own people's visibility. They want people to come to Facebook and never leave it. That's Facebook's goal. That's what they want to happen. Right now, it's not happening, but I think right now, probably, what is it? I think something like 30% of the time, or it's probably higher than that. I think it's something like 50% of the time people spend on their mobile phones is on Facebook. It's a high percentage, whatever it is. And people spend a lot of time on Facebook on their mobile phones. And right now, people, I think, access 50, it's something like 40 or 50% of the people, and maybe higher than that, who access the internet do it on their mobile phones. Another hint, make sure your website is mobile friendly. That means that if you're going to create a WordPress website, you want to have, oh no, I'm going blank on the word. Um, there's a specific term for it. You want a a theme that allows you, that adjusts to whatever screen size it is. I'm just going blank on the name of the kind of theme you want to have. But you want to have one that adjusts so if people access your website from a computer, they see the whole beautiful site. If they do it from a smartphone, the site gets smaller, but still is readable, still usable, and so on. It's something something or other, but I'm just going blank.
John, it's responsive, yes.
Yeah, somebody type that into the chat. You want a responsive theme. That's real important for your website. If you don't have it, you need to get it. My legacy website, bookmarket.com, is not responsive, and it's been losing over time its ranking in Google search. And so I'm probably at some point going to bite the bullet and essentially kill the site. And I've already been doing that in a sense by building up my new website, bookmarketingbestsellers.com. And at some point, I'm going to bite the bullet and send bookmarket.com to that site. And then over time, transfer all the good content that was on bookmarket.com to bookmarketingbestsellers.com, which is responsive website. Because bookmarket.com is losing visitors very quickly, because Google about a year ago said, if you're not responsive, if you don't have a mobile friendly site, we're not going to send traffic to you. And for, I know, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Zane, I think. It's not a WordPress website. It's a hard-coded website that I created using Dreamweaver. And so every page, it's not an easy thing to, I know there are services or things you can do to transfer pages to a WordPress site, but I don't want to use them because none of them are good enough to do it the way that I would want it done. So essentially, I'm having to take the 500 or 700 pages that are on that site and over time transfer them to my new site. And then I'll transfer bookmarket.com. And at this point, because Google isn't sending as much traffic, at some point I'm just going to kill the site and slowly transfer the content over to the new site and have it called bookmarket.com, as well as bookmarketingbestsellers.com, but they both go to the same site. It's a hard thing to do. Bookmarket.com started in 1995 or 1994, actually. So, it's gone through several different revolutions, you could say, as I redesigned it. I redesigned it at least 3 or 4 times, but always hard coding it using something like Dreamweaver, or at one point I used Front Page from Microsoft. At one point I used another one, I can't remember the name of it. It no longer exists. Front Page isn't supported any longer. I can still use it, but I think that very quickly nobody's going to be using Dreamweaver or Front Page or any other content management system that's hard coded like that. I think for us small guys, the authors and so on, we're going to use WordPress. Or you might use something like Wix if you wanted to, or Squarespace or Blogspot. Many of them now have services that allow you to be responsive in the content you create there. Personally, I like controlling the content that goes on my website and not being um, dependent on another website like Wix or Blogspot or so on. I have an old blog on Blogspot that I still add some content to once in a while. But one thing that there was a time when Facebook was telling companies, hey, transfer all your content to Facebook and we'll feature your page and all that. But then along comes an update to Facebook, and they're basically, there were people that spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get people to like their Facebook page. And then Facebook comes along and says, we're not going to show your page to all the people that like your page any longer. And they had reasons for doing that and so on. But essentially, their algorithm changed, and suddenly these companies that's invested, in some cases, millions of dollars into Facebook, building their list and building their content on Facebook, were essentially shut down. They weren't being shown to everybody any longer. And, so I don't want to be dependent on any website, any social network, and so on. One network alone in terms of where my content is and so on. So I want to own my website. I want to own the content on it. Now I do back it up because that's really important. But it's real vital, I think. And for most authors, WordPress.org, where you download the WordPress, upload it to your website, create pick a theme, and upload all the content to your website. And if you don't know how to do that, I guarantee you there's a teenager down the block that knows how to do it and can do it in their sleep. So, hire them, pay them $200 or, 100 ice cream cones or whatever it takes. I mean, they're the 5-year-olds that can do it. Kids are smart these days and they know the web and they could probably do things that you couldn't possibly do. So find somebody if you don't have a WordPress site now, if it's hard coded, to take your content. I really should probably hire somebody to transfer all my content, but I haven't done that yet. But the thing is, and the lesson you should learn from this is that things change and they keep changing. So I've been on the internet since 1994. And things have changed. I've seen revolution after revolution change. And gosh, I wish I had invested in Google back in 2002 or whatever, or invested in Facebook back in 2005 or whenever it was, or Amazon back in 1998 or whatever it was. But I didn't. And the thing is that things are changing all the time, but I would have a website. I wouldn't have just an app, because I guarantee you apps are going to disappear within the next 5 years. Apps are going to be passé because responsive websites are going to take over the app space and will do so probably in the next 2 years. There's new technology within the responsive websites space that allows you to add all the things that you would want to have that an app now provides that you can do on your website, and you don't have to pay for app hosting and all the other things that, I know companies that spent $1 million on an app. I know authors who have created an app using free app services for nothing, but they've had 10 downloads, and it's not that great an app. So responsive websites are the way to go right now. And over time, there's this new part of responsive websites that's going to be part of it. And you're going to see plugins for WordPress to implement all these special little tricks that you can do. And they're already out there. For example, if you want to instant message people via their cell phone, you don't need an app any longer. There's a plugin that allows you to capture people's cell phone number. They voluntarily give you the number so that they can get instant updates on their computer or on their phone. And so you have a new way to communicate with people. Again, there are lots of plugins like that. Some are for free, some are for plugins. If you don't know how to search for WordPress plugins within the WordPress dashboard, ask the teenager down the street or in the house where you live. If you have a kid that knows the computers. But you want that kind of thing to happen for you, because the internet marketing is going to continue to change. There are going to be new things all the way along, but one thing that won't change is the building of relationships. That's why you really want to, and this is a key thing that I want you to come away with on this talk, is you want to create relationships with other bloggers, other podcasters, other websites, other Facebook livers, or anything like that, or people doing webinars like Ginger's doing, so that you get invited and you get part of that. Because I'm reaching out to people right now that might buy my book, might buy my 747 book marketing service, or other things like that. And you get that through relationships. It doesn't matter how big the audience is. Like right now we have 9 viewers, so it's not a lot, but I guarantee you there's probably going to be hundreds of people that see this video over the next week or so, and then probably even more than that over the next year or two. And that's what you want to do. You want to create relationships with people that already have some traffic and will share it with you. Now, Ginger, in doing this webinar, wins both ways. She's sharing her traffic with me, but I'm also sharing my traffic with her. I told people in my newsletter, on my blog, in my Facebook, and so on, that this was happening, that I was going to be speaking. She added many of you to her list because I sent people to sign up for this webinar. And that's part of what happens over time. And what you're looking for is partners. Ideally, you want some superstars, if you can find them, that will showcase your content. But if you don't have superstars, find people that have 100 visitors a day come to their website, or 50, or even 100 people a month, because they can make a difference. If you can siphon off 10% of that traffic because you did an interview with somebody, that's going to make a difference. And over time, you're going to get more and more people coming to your website. And every time you appear on somebody else's podcast, webinar, website, blog, Facebook Live, Google notices. And the other search engines notice. And whatever replaces Google will notice. And at some point, there will be something that replaces Google, undoubtedly. Google will try to stay ahead of that curve and not get replaced. But gosh, I remember back in the old days when AOL was the big kahuna. And where's AOL nowadays? It still exists in some way, but boy, it's not what it was. I remember some of the different search engines that were the top dog at one point or another, and you don't even see them anymore. And even Yahoo, which was a search engine, now I think their search engine is actually run by Bing. Maybe it's somebody else now because Yahoo's been sold to Verizon, I think it is, or one of them. So you end up with changes all the time, and I've seen a lot of changes in the 23 years, I guess, I've been online. So there are going to be changes, but one thing that doesn't change is relationships. No matter what you've done, if you've created relationships, those relationships will continue to survive as long as that person lives. And I've had some dear friends die, of course, over the last few years, but I've also built new relationships with some young whippersnappers. And I love that, and I think that that's great. I love that there's new people always coming with fresh ideas and interesting things, and creating new audiences that might be interested in what I have to offer, and I can create a relationship with them, and that brings more people to buy my books over time and my services and so on. One other tip I'm going to give you that's really important: don't just sell books. Um, I think, and I don't know if Paul's still online, but if you are, Paul, I think, let's see if you're still here. Yeah, Paul Dixon. You have that middle grade or third grade reader level historical fiction. Figure out a way to take that and create something in addition to that. Whether it be that you become a school reader, you go and do school events, whatever it might be, but find a way to become part of the people's lives and become part of what they're doing. And I think Ginger's come on because she wants to tell me that we're almost done.
I think it's about time to start the Q&A if
Okay,
anybody has any questions.
but everybody, Kay, you have the humor books. Think of ways to translate that humor into videos you sell, or into appearances you do at Comedy Central, or a show you do. You sell the rights to do a show on TV or something like that. There are many, many different ways that you can share the same content, the same emotion, the same feeling that people get from reading your book, and showcase it in another way. I'm doing that continually, not only through my coaching, but also through the membership sites that I've created and other kinds of content, because I don't want to just be tied into a book. I think of the book as just content. The neat thing is, book authors are the greatest content creators in the world. We should be owning the internet because we have the best content in the world. We have better content than most of the websites that are out there because we create good content. Most of us book authors, we really do content creation in a way that most people don't. And so we should be looking at different ways to monetize our creation. Let's see if you have a question here. Yes, great idea. I started doing presentations based on my book. That's wonderful. I think that every author should become a speaker in some way, both live and online. There's so many opportunities online now. Podcasting is as live as ever. Radio is as live as ready. People said TV was going to kill radio. They were saying that back in 1980. They were saying it back in 1960 that TV was going to kill radio, and radio is as strong as ever. I think Rush Limbaugh on radio reaches more people than CNN and MSNBC. So, and possibly even Fox News. I don't know. But the thing is that radio is as strong as ever. Local radio is incredible. Podcasts are going to be around for a long time. You should think about creating a podcast. It's a simple thing to do. It's not that complicated. And there's software out there to do it, or services like Libsyn, which stands for Liberation Syndication, LIBSYN.com or SoundCloud.com. that could allow you to create a podcast and then syndicate it to iTunes and all the other syndication services out there, and they make it easy to do. And the service is $15 a month or more, depending on what you want. So there's lots of ways to do it, or do Facebook Live and just do a Facebook Live event every week. And don't just share yourself, invite other people and interview them. There's easy ways to do Facebook Live interviews with somebody else that you can use that allow you to create wonderful events that people will want, and it allows you to create relationships. If you want to create relationships with some top person in your field, invite them, Ask them if you can interview them. It's the best way to start creating a relationship with them. Because if
Amen.
they like the interview, if they like what you did, if they like the traffic you sent or the questions you asked, you become a friend, and the relationship comes. And you know, before we started this, I met the Loch Ness monster.
He's
And,
still
and
back there somewhere.
oh, there he is. And you know, things like that can happen. So you start to create a relationship with people online that builds into relationships that will turn into possibly when you meet them in person. Uh, I created relationships online with Joel Comm and Mike Koenig, and then I met them and we became even deeper friends, and so on and so forth. The same with Kim McArthur and other people that do internet marketing conferences and so on. So I'm not just a book marketing expert, I'm an internet marketing expert. I'm a Pinterest marketing expert, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all comes from building relationships.
John, I have a question. In your book, you mention that we should be doing local, and it says, don't forget your local newspapers and college newspapers. When we send out press releases, do we only have to send them out only when we launch our book, or are there other ways we can market our book through press releases?
That's an interesting thing. It's an actual course I'm probably going to create at some point. Is how to get publicity month after month. It's going to be, it's part of what I still have to upload to my 1001 Ways to Market Your Books